Hi, it's Liz Sneddon here. Just got some ideas that I'll share with you about authenticity of assessments and what we can do when we're doing it from distance. So we've got two different types. We've got small little contained tests that I want to run in a very short time period, and then I've got large tasks for statistics, for example, where I might want to give students a week to do the task. So let me just show you a few of the tools that I sometimes use. So Teacher Desmos is one that's quite a useful tool. And so for example, in here I can create a new task one at a time. So for example, Ken Clarkson, if you don't know, has some amazing tasks here all ready to go. So for example, here's one here that he's already made. You can make this up and you can have it in a series of slides. You can have graphs, you can have multi-choice answers, you can do all sorts of things, and so students can pick these up and move them around, do all sorts of interesting things with them, and so on. And so when I get around to, I can make a class of those. I can view, if I go to the dashboard of this, that then gives me a link here which I can share that with the students when I'm ready and say go to this activity, and it'll bring up all of their exercises here. When I have finished and I don't want them to do any more, then I come to the very last slide and I just click on the pause, and that pauses everybody's work. They can't change it, they can't go back to another slide, and so it locks that in. So that's one possibility for you. Education Perfect, if your school happens to have a Education Perfect already, then and that does cost, under assessments you can create a new assessment here. So I can say assign an assessment, and I can go, and there's some pre-built ones. I can create my own. I can do some quick tests that are already there to go. So if I want to do a quick test, I just need to say, right, do it with this particular class, and I need to go and choose what level I want it to be on. So I might say, right, let's do it on number, and I want some arithmetic skills at whatever curriculum level. I want to do integers at whatever curriculum level, and so on. And then so there's a bank of questions there, and I might say, right, make me 20 questions. I can then set the start and end date and times so that the test is only available, that students can only access it during this particular time period. And I can also set it up so that I can say enable full screen monitored mode, which means that students have to have it full screen. They can't go in and out of different tabs, and it records it every time they do go in and out of a tab, and so that makes it much more test conditions. So that's a possibility. I can make a Google form, and so here's one that I've got. So I just have a question which requires them to put their email address in, and then I've just got some questions that I will go and do. When I get the responses to that, I can see individually what each student has done, and I can look at all their answers and check on those, and I can make it set up to auto mark for me. So you can see here this is set up to auto mark, and I can also mark a question at a time. So I can go through and I can do all of question 1, I can do all of question 2, and so on. So I can just check all of my students' work per question. So there is a number of ways to do that, and you can have a little explore with Google Forms if that suits you. We could also do an eASTL test, and again with an eASTL test you can control the time and date that it is available to students. So I can create a new test. I can either create one that's copy an existing one or a similar one, or I can create my own one. So when I go to create a customized test, I'm going to say, let's say 9 number, and it is in our maths area, and I'm going to allow students 40 minutes to do the test. I'm going to choose what curriculum level. I want most of this to be at curriculum level 4, maybe some level 5 questions, maybe a teeny little bit of level 6 because this is a good class, and a few at level 3. Oh, I can only do 3 levels. Okay, so let's do 3, 4 and 5. I won't do any 6s. Then I choose what topic I want it on, so I can do it a number there, and then I can say how long I want to set it, and so on. So I can go through and set that up. So those are some options that I use for small tests. The other one is if I want to do a large task. So I tend to use either Google, I've used both Google and Microsoft, and a good thing to do is to be able to do a practice run of any of these things first to iron out, make sure everyone's got their logons, they know their passwords, they know how to access it, all of those good things. So in terms of conditions, and this is the managing authenticity part, for small tasks, I want that set start time, set finish time. I often will contact home, and it might just be an email or whatever, and just let parents know on Tuesday we're going to be running a small test. Could you please ensure that during this time from 11 to 12 o'clock that you're monitoring your child to make sure that they are doing it under test conditions and not looking at their workbooks. Or you can make it open book and say, no, look, don't care, I just want to know if you actually know this stuff, but you've only got a limited time to do it in. So you can choose some of those kind of conditions. And one of the big things I've found when I ran these tests last week was I needed to be available so that I can either use Teams or Zoom to either chat to the kids if they have a particular question, what's my password, what's my username, because it was much quicker than email. Or so there were a couple of times when I actually needed to video call them, and I could get the student to share their screen with me, and I could talk them through what to do, and I could see what the problem was. So I did need to be available for that time. If I've got a large task, and this is particularly where a lot of the statistics comes in, there's a number of different things that I do. So for example, I can give the students a choice. I could give them 2 or 3 different data sets to choose from, and within each data set I can have quite a number of different variables so that there is quite a lot of variation in the number of bivariate graphs they might make, or the number of comparison multivariate inference graphs that they might make. Another really useful one is to get them to take a random sample, because by doing that, that ensures that every single student has their own data, different mean, different median, different interquartile range, etc. So if, for example, I was using, let's do the sports science data set, I might teach all of my students beforehand, I need you to go in and do a stratified sample, and I want you to take a sample of, now for year 11s actually, we want the sample to be 20 and 40. With the year 12s or 13s, I'd make it bigger. So I'd say, right, take a sample of 40 of each of those. Now go ahead, do your graph, and I might want to compare height with gender. Then they can get their summaries, get their box plot, but each of these statistics will be different because they've each taken a random sample from the data set that I've provided them with. So that's quite a useful one to be able to do. What else? Regular checks. So when they submit their work, either through Google, it can be any of the Google Docs, Google Sheets, Google Slides, whatever, there is a way for me to check the version history. And same with in Word, Excel, PowerPoint, there is a way. So let me just show you those 2 options. So let me just open a document. So here I've got actually my Level 2 Inference workbook, and if I go across the top there, I can see it says last edit was yesterday. Now if you can't see that, then down the side in the file menu you've got a version history, and you can say see the version history. So that takes me through to this, and what I can see is on this list here I can see all of the things that were changed in it. So I can, for example, look at any particular time and see, oh okay, what was done at that moment in time. So on the 14th of March I can now look and see what edits did I make. And what I'm looking for is when there's big blocks of things. So these were only a series of small one, but if I get a student's work that they've copied and pasted a whole block all at once, it's quite possible that may not be their own work, because what I would expect to see is that the changes happen gradually over time. So that's if I was using any of my Google Docs, Sheets, etc. If I was to do this with Google, with Word or anything, so just open up a random document that I've got here. Under the File menu, I can come down to the Info, and under the Info there is a version history. So I can view the version history, and so I can see here what was done. I can open each version and compare what was done. So I can look through and see what revisions. So there were 6 revisions made in that particular document. Also, just under the straight info, it tells me when it was modified, when it was created, and here's a really good one, the total editing time. So this particular file has only been edited over 17 minutes. If students are doing a week-long assessment, I would expect it to be substantially longer than that. So that's quite a useful one. And Word, Excel, PowerPoint all have the same version history that you can see. Okay, so that's one thing that we can do there, is look at that version history. And often with these big ones, I'd get the students to submit daily to me. So if it's Google Classroom, upload it each day. If it's different systems, just to be sure. Now, in terms of plagiarism checks, there's some other ones, and I've got a link here. Marion Steele did a lovely session last year at the NZAMP conference, and she has got a authenticity document, and in this is on Census at School, by the way, if you want to access that. She introduced us to a couple of programs called DocuViz and DraftBack, which we can just get through the Chrome extensions or through the Chrome Web Store, and they enable you to check and look at that history in a much more complete way. So this is quite a good one. So I first of all want to have some evidence of the kids' work. So I want to look at their practice assessments, and that's why it's really important I get them all submitting their work to me. Turnitin. If your school has Turnitin, then obviously that does a full plagiarism check, but that does cost. But then there's these options here with DocuViz and DraftBack, and let me just show you a quick snapshot of what they do. So what they do here is they give you a timeline, and so the different colors relate to the different people that have worked on the document, and it shows you over time, look, they did this much work, then they did this much more work, and so you're looking for those big blocks of time. So this one is quite a useful way to visually see the document has grown, and that's what we're seeing, is it's gradually growing over time. The other option is a program called DraftBack, and this kind of renders it. It literally rewrites it in real time, and you can speed up the time process, but it literally shows you step by step. Look, they typed this in, they typed this in, they typed this in, and so you can actually see the document building in front of you. So when you've got concerns, you can actually go and look and say, oh look, whole plonk of work just got created all at once. Whereas this one, I can see they're typing because it's just showing me on the screen at working in progress. So there are a number of choices for you and ideas. Hopefully they are helpful. If you do want to get in touch, please just let me know. I'm always happy to help.